Welcome to the Excellence in Enterprise podcast, where I reach out to people I do not know, engage with friends, all for the purpose of learning about them, learning about what they care about, why they care about what they're doing, what they're engaged with from across multiple different industries and multiple different vantage points and viewpoints, all for the purpose of increasing my personal knowledge and kind of thinking outside the box when it comes to my work, my professional career. I want to draw from those sources, and I thought you might be interested in hearing as well. So I hope you will join me on this journey. You can find me on YouTube, on Spotify, on Instagram, and on Twitter. Feel free to reach out anytime. I'd love to engage with you. And I hope you enjoy this podcast interview engagement journey with me. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 7 of the Excellence in Enterprise podcast. Today, I'm joined by Nandy Martin, and a very quick background. Nandy, actually, this is one of the questions I want to ask you is like how you got connected with Cambria. So what happened was I was trying to figure out how to get going with Chosen Candle, and my sister Cambria, who's very much more connected socially than I am, had a number of people that she put me in contact with, and Nandy and her sister Carrie were two of the people who were just the most awesome and enthusiastic about helping us out with Chosen and sharing kind of what we were doing, and we're just extremely supportive. And so that's how I first got kind of randomly connected with Nandy. And other than that, the only times that we've connected is when I reached out because we were trying to figure out how we wanted to do or develop like an influencer program. And so you were gracious enough to give me like 40 minutes of your time at one point. And since then, we haven't talked as much. We still follow each other and interact here and there on Insta and whatnot. But barring all of that, I wanted to ask you to start off is if you could give us like a kind of a general background of where you grew up, what you were kind of into as a kid, and then where you're at now. Because, you know, I have some questions because I was doing some quick research to try and, create a framework for understanding. But why don't you go ahead and give us a background?
Yes. Well, hey, y'all. I am Nandy Martin. Grew up in southern Louisiana to two Honduran parents. So very different. Not too many Latinos here in the South. So it was very different growing up. But nonetheless, I love where I'm from. I love being from the South. Everything about it, especially Louisiana specifically, is my absolute favorite. Growing up, I pretty much like to do just, the basic stuff like any other kid, going outside, hanging out with friends, going to the movies, all that good stuff. And then in school is kind of where my whole love for entertainment and arts kind of came to be. I was in choir, I think it was middle school to high school. And then took theater classes in high school, was in a play, and I just really loved performing. I was also a dancer, so I did dance growing up as well. So yeah, performing, the arts, entertainment was just always my favorite thing to do more than anything else. And yeah, that was pretty much all I ever did growing up was just performing and, just make things up. My siblings and I, we would create dances together. We put on recitals and shows for our family. Yeah, just really fun stuff like that. Typical things that kids do.
Okay. And so then what are you doing kind of today? And you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, right? So
yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so mid late 20s. So today, so I'm pretty much just focusing on my career. Right now I'm kind of in a bit of a waiting season, I guess you can say. There's tons of waiting in this career just to begin with. Lots of having to be patient and, just waiting around for, the opportunities and the doors to open. But yeah, just trying to get, creative in different aspects. In music, I've been writing a lot, just working with, different producers and, connecting and networking with different people via social media, because right now it's just so hard still, even though COVID's not super big, as much here anymore. It's still kind of hard, to like connect with people like, in person. So social media has kind of been like the way to go. And yeah, and then acting, just auditioning a ton. And I actually have some projects right now, like a few that like fingers crossed I get answers to soon for some like TV and film projects that I've been auditioning for.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so one question I had is, how did your parents end up in Louisiana as Hondurans? Like, what's the story there?
Yes. So it was actually my grandfather on my mom's dad. He was a cook on U.S. naval ships. I don't know how he got this job. I'm assuming it was some time when he was in Honduras, got the job, and yeah, he was a cook on U.S. naval ships. And so two of the ports that the ship would land at were the port of New Orleans and the port of New York. So he actually, I'm like, I could have been a New Yorker, but he loved New Orleans. And he would always say like, it just like the energy, the traditions, the culture, the food, even like the weather, it's very humid here whenever it gets like hot in the summer, was very similar to Honduras. So he loved it. So he literally, like, I think it was just like a few years later, decided to bring his family down. And my mom actually moved here when she was about 16. So her and her siblings have been here a while. And then my dad like followed her just a couple of years later. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And
Yeah.
so what do your parents do now? And the reason I'm asking is, how has that played, or I guess the question is, has that played any influence in both you and also, Carrie too, are kind of in
Yeah.
acting and this whole kind of creative creation
Mhm.
stuff. So did your families, how did you guys get to that versus just kind of growing up and, doing it yourselves?
Yeah. So it's really funny because neither one of my parents sings, acts, nothing. Like they're like, that is not my style. That's not my thing. They're actually in like the home development business. So my dad is a contractor and my mom is a real estate agent. So completely different, like very different than what Carrie and I do. And I think the one thing that I definitely got from them though, growing up, just it kind of like runs in my family, just like their work ethic. Being from a different country and coming to the United States, not knowing the language here, really, I think inspired like my siblings and my cousins and I, like to just, want to be better. Cause I'm like, okay, if you were able to do it, you didn't know the language, you didn't really know what you were doing here. I should be able to do it. So it really just like motivated me and encouraged me to always just like go after, what it is that I want in life and not give up, not let people or whatever it may be, to discourage me and tell me that I can't do, what I put my mind to. So yeah, it really they were just like my inspiration growing up for sure.
Okay. So
Yeah.
because I'm curious if that answers a different question I was going to ask, which is that the reason that pursued and have continued to pursue and succeed in kind of the creative career path? And the reason I'm asking, right, is for those of us on the outside,
Yeah.
we're told that it's very difficult to succeed, and it is not only just in terms of actually getting into shows and making those connections or TV or whatever it is that you're filming or whatever it is on the acting side, but then also in terms of the actual career side and actually being able to make a living off of it. What was navigating that process like, and how have you pursued jumping those hurdles?
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, my sister and I, we always talk about it. Like we'll always look back and reminisce on like when we first started in the industry. I was 17 years old. She was about 23. So we were fairly young, kind of like on our own in LA, like, trying to figure this whole thing out. And I think for us, it was just, yeah, that determination, kind of like what our parents had always like instilled in us, and like our grandparents, they were like, don't stop, going after the things that you want in life. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. Cause, of course, like people used to tell us like in school and stuff, I used to have, girls would be like, you're not going to make it and stuff like that. And it would really, it was really discouraging. But I don't know. I think, having the family that I have who are really just like, no, don't let people, tell you that you can't do it, really helped Carrie and I keep moving forward, even though like we went through many ups and downs. This industry is not easy by any means. People, exactly what you said, like some people think like, oh, it's just about booking the job and being on a cool TV show, being on a cool movie, which it is. And once you're on it, it's amazing. But yeah, the career and the process to get to the really beautiful moments, it's very, very difficult. So I think, yeah, I think it's just all about, having good people in your corner and in your, community, just kind of like uplifting you and reminding you, that even if it hasn't happened yet, it's going to happen. Just stay like determined, keep that drive, and yeah, don't lose hope.
What sorts of sacrifices do you feel you needed to make in order to stay on that head down, nose to the grindstone, going through working through the disappointments and things like that? What have you had to sacrifice?
Tons. I'm I think every sacrifice ever. I mean, first of all, like moving from Louisiana to California, mind blowing. I never thought that that would happen. That was the first time that I had ever moved anywhere. So yeah, like being 17 years old, away from my parents, away from my family. I had a boyfriend at the time, had to sacrifice that relationship. So I think like family, relational, relationally, like family, friends. And then, yeah, just, I don't know, like just kind of having to sacrifice, like every want, every desire that I had at the time. I sacrificed going to college because that was kind of the plan. Like I was going to go to college, like super determined to do that. And then this came up kind of around the same time, and I chose this career instead. So yeah, it was tough. But yeah, I feel like I had to sacrifice a lot of things. Yeah.
No, that's good. What gave you the confidence to pursue that path in the face of the sacrifices and the uphill climb?
I think it was so Carrie and I, we actually went to an acting school. Like that's kind of like where this whole thing began. And I think it was, also like the teachers, like our teachers, our peers, classmates, like everyone just always said, like y'all are going to make it, and that just like really encouraged us. We were, like there's not a lot of actors and people in the entertainment industry in Louisiana, and especially at the time that we started, it wasn't really big. Like now you'll hear about like, oh, Hollywood South, like there's tons of films and TV shows being filmed here now. But at the time, you didn't really hear about that. So I think it was like just, yeah, the people that we were surrounding ourselves with, the people at the school, the teachers, everything, they were just very encouraging, and they just kind of always, instilled that that encouragement of y'all are going to make it. Like it may take a little while, but it's going to happen. And then seeing, all the other success stories, all the other people that had come out of that school with success, and still even today, like they're very, very successful. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've been, I think, learning lately is when I typically in the past have thought about creative people, which is to say people not like me because I'm not very creative. um, it's, and I think it's one of the generally promulgated understandings of creatives is that they're more, they're maybe not as detailed or not as focused, or right. They're in a creative world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the things that I've been learning lately is I've been observing and learning about a few different creatives in different spaces. And what I'm hearing from you is there is also an element to at least those that certainly enjoy what they're doing and are trying to be successful with it in a career way versus like a hobby way, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of a certain level of determination and commitment what is it like balancing between, and maybe there isn't a balance, maybe it's something natural, but I'm curious as someone who leans maybe more on the less creative side, but still dedicated side versus more creative. What is it like balancing that determination, that need for focus and, hard work, detail oriented commitment, and the creative, natural creative side of things?
Yeah, I'm like, I hope I can answer this question correctly. But I mean, I think for me, so I feel like for me, like this, like the whole entertainment industry, it doesn't even really feel like a job. And so for me, it's just kind of like, I don't know, the creative side just kind of comes naturally. Uh, I'm like trying to think how to like answer this properly. Yeah, I feel like it just kind of comes naturally. Like I've never really seen it as a job. I feel like when people make it out to be uh, a job, it can become super, super stressful. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I don't know how to answer this question properly.
No,
I'm
it's
trying to like answer it, but then it's like not coming out right. Um,
Well, so like
yeah,
if you have a project that you need to work on, right?
yes.
There's and For instance, your song "Faithful,"
Mhm.
which I listened to and I loved it.
Thank you.
So yes, all of the reviews are accurate, the positive ones anyway. um, so right, this is a project that you have to work on, and there are people that
Yes.
there's a team that is working with you to produce and develop this as a song, right? And so there are meetings, there are details, there's work that needs to be put in, right, to organize around this creation. But then there's also the maybe more soulful, mindful creativity behind developing the song. And how, I guess the question that I have is, how does like the determination to work towards making a song uh not clash with the natural evolution, creative development of the song that's coming from like more your soul versus like your head driving it?
Yeah. Well, okay. So like, for instance, when I was doing Faithful and like, even I have a song right now that I've been working on. Um, I mean, yeah, like I feel like it just kind of comes naturally. Uh, I don't, yeah, like whenever I'm in the process of, like writing things like that, uh, yeah, it just kind of comes naturally. So like I'll start with the idea, like the essential idea of what I want the song to be about. And then from there, I'll come up with like the melody. And then from like the melody, we'll come up with the words. And yeah, I mean, I feel like the whole process, I don't know, like the process, I definitely try not to ever again, I don't know if this is like correct, but I try not to ever allow it to feel like work, even, when it comes to, like actually having to like the business side of it. Like, I don't know, for me, it never feels like work. I don't like to fully like stress over it. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's
What do you
correct.
feel like is the difference between the Nandy Martin who might be on the side or in one life is just creating these, awesome, beautiful songs and kind of creates them for herself, right? That's the
Mhm.
creativity being unleashed in its own way. And the Nandy in this life, in this world, which does that, but also is applying kind of the business drive to actually creating it, turning it into something and then putting it out into the world, for the purpose of, I mean, obviously the creativity is important, but there's also an element there of career and, developing, making a living off of it and things like that. What's the difference between the Nandy in World One and the Nandy in World Two?
Honestly, I feel like there's not really a difference.
Okay. Okay.
Like I've said before, I don't know, like for me, like even when it comes to like the business aspect of it, I mean, I guess I will say like when it comes to, okay, now it's like time to like release a song, stuff like that, I put like my little business cap on And I'm like, how many views do I need? How many shares do I need? Right. Whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I think for me, like, just essentially like, because what happens is if I put too much stress on the whole thing, on the business side of it all, it now becomes not fun for me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like, I like it. For me, it's not just like a hobby, you know, it is like, it is my job, but it's also something that I really, really love. And so if I kind of like make it out, oh no.
It's all good.
I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. It's
Like,
totally
it's
fine.
just getting good. Oh my goodness.
It's part of living in a digital world.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so, but yeah, just kind of like to wrap it up, I feel like for me, yeah, I try not to like fully put too much stress on it, because for me in general, like it'll overwhelm me if I kind of like make it like a job. If that makes any sense. I'm hoping that makes sense. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just like, I love it so much, you know, that if I feel like if I begin to like make it like super stressful and like make it feel like a job, it just becomes overwhelming. So I feel like there's really not much of a difference. I just kind of do what I do naturally. And then, I mean, by the grace of God, it just kind of works, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what is an example that of something that has been the most difficult for you to uh, relative to it stressing you out maybe, but you have to, you know, do it in order to move the project forward?
I would say, I think like once like the release date comes, seeing like, okay, how many people are listening? Do people like it? I think it's just like, music wise, it's like the response. And I guess I would say the same thing like with acting. It's like the response, you know, because for acting as well, if a show or a movie that I'm on doesn't do well, the ratings are bad, I'm out of a job, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's kind of where the business side of it may become a little stressful. And same thing with music. If it's not doing well, I'm like, oh, no, now I have to wait for the next song that I put out. Or it's like, I have to figure out like, okay, how else can I market this? How else can I, you know, put it out, you know, into the world for people to actually listen to the song. So I feel like if anything, that would probably be the most stressful parts of it all. But even then, like I said, I try not to put too much pressure on it, because if I do, it just becomes super overwhelming, you know? So I kind of, it's one of those things where it's like, once it's out, I'm like, okay, it's out, and we'll just kind of see, you know, we'll just kind of take it day by day, you know, moment by moment. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. How did you originally get into, or how did you end up choosing and or accepting the pursuit of multiple creative paths and endeavors, right? And what I mean by that is, you know, there's music, there's acting, clearly different worlds, and certainly more so today, you know, obviously in like the, I don't know, not necessarily great with timelines, but like the 1950s and 60s, right? The golden age of
Right.
Hollywood, like all that kind of stuff. They were mixing both of them.
Mhm.
So how did you end up kind of choosing to do both, and where did that come from versus falling into a single one and pursuing that only?
Yeah. So music was actually, the thing that like, music has always been my number one. So that was like really the thing that I wanted to strictly focus on. And the acting school that Carrie and I had gone to, they required acting skills. So I was like, okay. I mean, I didn't really think that that would happen. I had always loved, like I said, I always loved performing. I took acting or theater classes in school. So it wasn't like a huge surprise, but I was just like, oh, okay. I didn't think it, you know, I would do it. So, yeah, so they required to take acting classes. So we started with a 5-week course, and then from there we got asked to join them in LA at their talent convention. And so they were like, so if you want to do the music side of it, you got to do the acting side of it. And I was like, all right. So we started, you know, doing intensives, and yeah, just kind of like growing our craft, growing that acting muscle. And I mean, it was very surprising because I feel like acting has always kind of come very naturally to me, even though it wasn't like my number one focus. And I feel like that's what happens all the time. Like the thing that you don't really want, it always like ends up going so well for you, compared to like the thing that you actually want. So like music, it's taken a little bit longer than acting. But so yeah, I honestly, without even really wanting to do it, or thinking that I would ever pursue a professional career in acting, it just kind of fell into my lap. And I mean, it's been a blessing. It's been really awesome. So yeah, I think like balancing the two, it is sometimes kind of difficult, but I will say what's really cool about, excuse me, about the music aspect of it all is I've kind of been able to create my own schedule because I don't have like a music manager. I'm not signed to a label or anything yet. So I've kind of been able to like do things on my own, like as an independent artist. Whereas with acting, I have my manager, I have my agents, and they kind of do it for me. So it's not as stressful as it seems. They're the ones who send me out the auditions. I audition, and then they kind of literally handle the rest. So yeah, it hasn't been too difficult to balance out, but yeah.
When did you try and go into that school? How old were you when you were trying to get into that school?
I think I was like 16. So it was literally like about a year before we officially moved out to LA.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And the reason I was asking is like when I was doing some research, I came across Reverb Nation, which you had an account or have an account on there with some songs. Yes. And I quickly listened to the Love Me or Leave Me.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I liked the beat. I liked the flow of it. And
oh my gosh. Good times.
I was disappointed that the videos were private. I was a little disappointed you privated the videos because I thought that would be interesting. Yeah. But that's okay. And you were like 18-ish, I think, when you were
I think I was about, like 17, 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the status that you had, which I thought was awesome, was Get Ready World, Here I Am, Here and Now, with exclamation marks. And so I'm curious, you, in our brief interactions in the past, and obviously even now, you're one of the most vivacious, upbeat people that I've interacted with. And not that people can't get excited about things, but sort of in terms of consistency. Yeah. And I'm curious, obviously going back to a while back, it appears to have been a component of your personality. Is that something that has always been a factor of your personality, or is that something that you feel like you've purposefully, tried to pursue, or what, where does that come from? And like, what is that piece of you, and what's your, perspective on it?
I feel like, so yeah, ever since I was a little girl, I've always been just like very energetic, very bubbly, just like, I guess very sweet. I don't know. I'm like not trying to pat myself on the back, but yeah, I've always had a very high energy personality, very big personality ever since I was a little girl. But when I was like in school or like meeting new people, I was always kind of shy. So people didn't come to really know that side of me until they really got to know me. And then when I started at the acting school, that's where like I feel my personality like really came out. Because we were kind of like put on the spot. They were like, okay, like go ahead, do what you need to do, And so I was like, okay, like I can't pretend to be, someone that I'm not, or I can't like be shy right now, So yeah, I feel like it was at the acting school, and just like acting and music and everything, like learning to perform in front of big crowds. That's kind of where I really, really kind of got out of my shell. And this personality that you'll see today, it's like it was always there, but now she's shining everywhere. So yeah, I feel like it was honestly just like a couple of years ago where I became comfortable, enough to just be like, all right, here I am, love me or leave me, literally, like the song.
Yeah. Well, clear
Always.
case in point, it was always there.
Yeah,
Okay.
always.
Okay. So what has been the hardest part I guess what has been the biggest challenge to you being that sort of person?
So I will say, I literally, I always tell like my family this, especially my sisters. I'm like, man, I have such a big heart for people, and it's really good. I feel like it's one of my greatest qualities and traits, but I feel like it's gotten me in trouble also. I literally, I feel like having this kind of personality and like loving people so hard, um, it, yeah, it's gotten me in trouble in the sense that like, I just always want to see the good in people, even when they suck, you know? And yeah, I mean, I've seen it in like, friendships, relationships. Yeah, it's, yeah, it's good and it's bad. So I have to be very cautious. I feel like as I've gotten older, I try to stay a little bit more guarded when coming to like meet new people. I try not to give, people like the full, like open book story of my life. Where like when I was like younger, I feel like I was more open to doing that. And now I'm like, wait, I have to be a little bit cautious, not let people in too quickly or too easily. So yeah, I feel like the challenge has just been that. Just, I'm like, oh, I want to, talk to you and like tell you my life story. Cause for whatever reason, it's like I become very trusting of people very easily. And but yeah, like I said, as I've gotten older, I've had to kind of like, bite my tongue a little bit and be like, okay, I'll tell you the story later. Let's just get to know each other right now. So
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
yeah.
obviously I don't know, but I feel like to some extent that that is a natural or an element of a creative natural interaction with the world
Mhm.
is due to that openness. You creative people tend to be able to interact with the world and draw more from it
Yeah.
than for inspiration. Like they're connecting with, you know, in my opinion, with their soul, with things that exist, and whether it's the spiritual world or the natural world or human beings
Right.
and their essence and like their energy and things like that. And when you have that kind of creative open, it kind of goes hand in hand with being open because you have to interact with those things which get swept under the rug for someone who maybe isn't as creative.
Yeah.
And I know, like for me, I've had to, especially in high school, I had to work and college. I had to work really hard to actually then be able to interact with those sorts of things. That didn't make me
Yeah.
creative, but it like in terms, like people talk about empathy, right?
Hmm.
And I would assume that you're someone who's relatively empathetic,
Yeah.
and people's attitudes and spirits have a substantive impact on you, and you can
Yeah.
feel that. And that's something that like I did not have at all, maybe intuitively as a kid, but like not really. And in high
Yeah.
school I had to like learn it through a bunch of like different difficult relational circumstances, and I've gotten so much better at it, and it became like a really strong tool. But like on the flip side, that's something I had to learn to be more open, maybe in some ways, with my spirit and my soul, and as opposed to like you being on the creative side, having to learn to guard it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's hard. It really is. And then I feel like my family, like a lot of my family members have the exact same personality. Like we're all very like loving. And then, being Hispanic, the whole like lovey-dovey, thing, and being what's the word? Like just very they use this word in Spanish. It's called cariñoso. Like you're just like you're very loving and you love everyone, So it's like having all of that kind of in one. Yeah, it's so tough. And I mean, like I said, it's a good trait to have. It's a good quality, but yeah, got to be very cautious because it can get me in trouble.
yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. So, kind of relative to what you're working on today or what you up to today, and or currently, I guess, as opposed to necessarily today. Couple questions. So one is, what is it like perfecting your craft when you are trying to do multiple different things? What is your
Oh my
process
God.
like for that? Because, this kind of goes back to the acting versus singing versus whatever else, right? But, I think you talked about, doing some writing. And so like you have a bunch of different creative outlets, but you're also driven and very focused. And so I know
Yes.
that those aren't really um, they're not really just for the sake of relaxing or letting off steam or chilling. They're purposeful. So how do you go about trying to perfect your craft when there are multiple crafts that you care about?
Yeah. So perfecting my craft is probably, I think that's probably like one of the most difficult things for me. Just because like when, I mean, I guess anyone can really relate, if when you're like good at something, essentially, you just almost become like a perfectionist. So I'm such a perfectionist when it comes to, like music, acting, whenever I'm doing like an audition, I literally, and nowadays right now, because they're not doing like in-person auditions, I have like my sister taping me and I'm like, I'm so sorry. Can we do it again? Like I'll be in the room for like at least like an hour and a half, 2 hours, just doing it like 10 times to perfect it. And same thing with music. Like it takes me, a little while to really perfect the song. I'm not like, okay, here you go. It's done. I'm like, oh no, like I need to make sure that the melody's right. I need to make sure that the music's right. I need to make sure that, the words like make sense. So I'll like go back. I have this one song right now that I just recently finished writing, I think last month. And I went back in it like just a few days ago and I was like, I hate this line. Like, I can't for the life of me, like figure out this one line. So I'm like, it's like erased. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But yeah, I feel like I've become a perfectionist and yeah, so like perfecting my craft is probably my least favorite thing to do. Because yeah, it takes me forever to like really, really perfect it. And again, like I said before, like I try to never like actually have it feel like work. So, even then I'll try to like still have fun with it and, like put music on while I'm trying to do it. But yeah, it's tough. Yeah, bottom line, it's not my favorite thing to do.
Do you, what is your, or I guess let me ask this as a question. How do you treat your perfecting your craft process or working on a project or whatever it is perfecting craft process? Do you treat that as essentially you trying to learn how to do it right versus it being a job that you need to do? Is that a fair way of describing the difference in tone that you try to strike with yourself? And is that how you do it?
Yeah, I feel like, yes, I do. I do think it's more just like I want to learn as I go. Especially like, so for instance, like with music and the whole writing process, I just recently, like within like the last year and a half, started to like write on my own. So like before I would do only co-writes, which even like the professionals, like the big people, like you'll see on their albums and stuff, like they work with like a ton of different writers. So they co-write all the time. So there's nothing wrong with that, but I had never like ever, I think maybe like one time when I was like 12, I wrote like a little measly little song on my own, but it made absolutely no sense. But yeah, within like the last year and a half, I've started to do it on like my own. And so for me, yeah, like doing, like perfecting it is more just like a way of being like, okay, let's learn as we go. Because it is something that's fairly new for me. And with acting, I've been doing it so long and I've had, I mean, I think like over, I don't know, like maybe like 500 auditions now that I've been doing it for so long. So, like in the audition process though, and like auditioning and doing the scenes, doing the, running the lines and everything, that's kind of like where I get, a lot of my, what's the word? The word is, what am I trying to say? I like lost my train of thought. Yeah, that's kind of like where, like in the audition, like as I audition, is where I learn, like how to be a better actor, or like, what not to do in the next, audition or whatever. I like to look back. I always like watch my tapes back a couple times until it's perfect. But yeah, it's not fun though. It really isn't. It's not, that's probably like the one part where I'm like, oh, man, like this kind of sucks a little bit, but yeah.
Well, it sounds like on the good side of things is trying to treat it as a positive discovery process versus, and that's what I mean by a learning process, maybe
Yeah.
versus this is wrong, I didn't do it right.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I would say so.
Okay. So then how do you stay creative when you're pursuing all of these things?
Do you mean like when I'm not like in the studio, or
Well, just
just
how
kind
does
of like
Nandy
at home?
Martin stay creative? Like, why haven't you burnt out from being creative for the last, 20 years or, however long?
Um, so I feel like for me, I mean, so with acting, like normally like you'll go to like acting classes and you'll kind of stay creative there. Obviously like within the last few years though, I kind of stopped taking acting classes just because I was focusing more on like the music side of everything. So what I do now, and what has actually, you're gonna think this is kind of crazy, maybe, I don't know, but watching TV and film, like I've started getting really into lots of like different shows and new movies. And it's like being an actor or an actress, whenever you're watching a movie or a TV show, like I don't know if anybody else does this, but I'm like, as an actress, like I'm just like studying like these people's like mannerisms and their behaviors and everything. Like it's so bizarre. I'm like, I can't watch a movie anymore without being like, oh, I love that choice, So I feel like for myself, like yeah, I stay creative with just watching lots of TV, film, or even like interviews and stuff, just like learning from like the actors themselves through interviews. I'll like look them up on YouTube. Same thing with music, just kind of like learning, like, okay, I think for me too, like what I've kind of been challenging myself with lately is it's so easy to watch an interview or get to know someone that you love or are inspired by and compare yourself to them. And, I've caught myself sometimes being like, oh, that's so great. Like they're like doing really well. And so I've kind of been challenging myself lately to be like, you know what, instead of seeing someone else like succeed and thinking like, oh, like I'm not there yet, I'm challenging myself to be like, no, like what did this person, kind of like studying and learning, about their process and what they did to get to where they are today. And yeah, just kind of like taking those like tips and tricks and kind of, adding them into, like whatever, like my process and stuff. And that's really been helping me a lot. And just like helping me like stay motivated and inspired, but yeah, so that's kind of like, that's kind of my process. Yeah, just like watching other people and seeing, what other people do, and then just adding that into my niche of things.
Okay. The reason I was
Yeah.
smiling so much while when you were talking about that is because you made me so happy.
Yeah.
Because I was literally thinking about this 2 nights ago, and so I watch a ton of different shows and movies and stuff. Not like all the
Yeah.
time, but pretty consistently. And one of the reasons that I do it, and I was trying to figure out how to put this into words, and that's why I was thinking about it, but is like I watch for motivation.
Mhm.
And it's obviously in a different way. I'm not watching to see how an actor is acting necessarily. I
Yeah.
mean, I love great acting, but so like, what I realized is I was trying to figure out an answer for friends or family who make a recommendation, and I
Hmm.
don't watch or check out that recommendation for weeks or months and months and months sometimes,
Yeah.
even though I'm sure it's good. And I'll even like right now, there's some recommendations sitting out there, and it's like I'm rewatching a show I've seen 5 times.
Right.
And I was trying to think like, what is my answer for that? Like, because it can come off as like, you not caring about the recommendation or something. And 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 I think the answer is, as I was thinking about it, is like I watch the stuff that I watch for motivation. And so like if I'm thinking about business stuff and like I've got 2 or 3 different business ideas that I'm working on or whatever it is like that, like I'll watch Suits, and I love that show.
Yeah.
And that's the one that I'm rewatching again. And I've seen it like 5 times. And
That is awesome.
and the reason is like I'm looking for the motivation associated with, you know, how Harvey and Lewis and Jessica act and like who they are as people in the business world. Now I get it's fake, right? But that's not the point. The point is the motivation,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And the same thing with, you know, sometimes when I want to watch, you know, something where I'm looking for more, maybe positive motivation in relationships or things like that. And it's like, I'll go watch Chuck,
Yeah.
or The Big Bang Theory or something along those lines. And so anyway, so that's why I was so happy and smiling. Cause it's like, I totally get what you're saying. Again, different medium, but 100%. And I do the exact same thing. And so,
yes, I love that.
but the other reason I was smiling is because it tied into one of my questions, which was going to be, what recently have you been watching in the last, you know, month or two or whatever that you've really enjoyed or has had that really positive impact on you or your thinking or motivation?
I'm so excited that you asked me that. So yeah, recently, I'd say like within like the last few weeks, I have become obsessed with Outlander. Have you seen it?
No, it's one of the ones that's been recommended, but I haven't checked it out.
Oh my gosh, you have to watch it. So like it's a little racy, obviously.
I know you have to give that disclaimer on pretty much anything these
Yeah.
days.
So a little racy, little intense, but it's so good. And so like for me, yeah, like as an actress, for me, it's motivated me in so many different ways. Like the other day, I actually had an audition where like the character was very similar to one of the main characters on Outlander. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna play like my inner Claire in this role. And it worked. It actually worked. So like, yeah, I have felt super inspired just in like so many different ways. And like the show too, like the love story, it's very beautiful, but can I just say like, there is something about the main guy where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't think I've ever actually met like a man like him. So it's kind of like also, I don't know, like, I think encouraged me, like, cause I'm like, I am single. Like, I think it's also encouraged me, you know, just like in knowing like, there's guys out there that are like this, you know? Cause he's like a very like big, like brute man, like man's man, but he has this like super sweet, like heart and just so amazing to like the female, like, main character. So yeah, I don't know, I've gotten a lot of things from the show. It's so good. I literally binged the first 5 seasons that are currently out right now, within like the last like week or so. I don't even know. It's kind of bizarre. And can I just say, I normally don't do this. So like I was saying before, I love TV and film, but I normally don't binge things. So it was pretty shocking. Like it must be pretty good. Like if I'm over here binging it in like a week, it's gotta be good, but no.
Okay.
You have to watch it. So good.
All right. Well, I mean, now that you've described, the main male character,
yeah,
you know, I have to figure out if I relate or not.
Yes. Go get some tips and tricks.
Yes.
Oh man.
Okay. So I'm going to take a sidestep real quick and stay on this track. So if you're looking for a recommendation, and I assume if you like Outlander, you should like this one. It's my favorite show of all time, which is it in terms of like overall awesomeness. I have other shows that like I really, really love, like Chuck, but but this one is like number one, and it even beats out Suits, which is also really high up there. And it's called The Last Kingdom.
I have heard of it.
Okay, so
haven't watched it.
Okay, so racy. It's not that bad overall. Like there's other things that are worse. I'm also the kind of person where I watch a show I literally won't remember anything, and I'll make a recommendation. They'd be like, that was, there were like 20 scenes. I was like, I just always forget. So I was like,
it kind of just like goes over.
It's like, I'm not watching it for that stuff, so it's like, I don't really remember it. So disclaimer, it's probably more racy than I'm making it sound. But like when I say there's like only a few scenes, there might be 20. I don't know, but it's not that
like bad. The whole show.
Yeah, it's not that bad. But the main character is awesome. The entire show, I've seen it like 6 times. The entire show is about character development. When you watch it like the first time, unless you're watching it for that reason or with that in mind, you don't really notice it. You just kind of watching like, oh, this is awesome. But like, if you pay attention to the character development, especially if like every time I rewatch it, the reason I rewatch it is every time I rewatch it, there's new lines and new facial expressions that I notice that are directly connected to the overall story and everything. The last season wasn't unfortunately as good as the first 3. But
that sucks.
Yeah, it's okay, but that's okay. It's still awesome enough. And I still care about the main character so much that I don't mind. They went from like a 10 out of 10 or like a 9.5 out of 10 to like 7.5 out of 10 in my book.
Oh, dang.
But it's okay. It's okay. It's still worth it.
Okay.
And
I'll still watch it.
If you like this Outlander character, dude, then my guess is you'll like this other character because he starts out pretty rough around the edges and develops as a character to that sort of person. So, and there's just so many good lines. Anyway, all right, moving on.
So good. I'm going to have to watch it.
Okay. So one of the things I wanted to ask is, and I think this ties into what we were talking about previously with being creative and balancing it and whatnot. And then also how you go about creative would you describe your creativity as proactive or reactive? And the reason or the image that's in my mind as I ask that question is, I've listened to interviews or podcasts or read or whatever it is of different artists. And a lot of them have described themselves as like having this sense of the song, like the song was there and they were just like uncovering it and discovering it, but it was already, it somehow already existed in the universe and they were, drawing from it versus, maybe other people on the flip side of things who are, going note by note, crafting this, masterpiece. So which side of those do you feel like you fall into? And maybe I'm being too black and white with it, but
I feel like honestly, it just kind of depends. So I've found myself like, I feel like recently the idea will just come to me. I don't have anything, right? I may have like the melody, but it'll just like be like the idea. It just comes and I'm like, that's what I want to write about. And then sometimes it's the other way around where it's like, okay, we need to kind of just like start from scratch, and we'll start with the melody and then we'll just kind of go from there. And hopefully the idea just comes to me. But I feel like usually I would say, I like to at least have an idea of what I want to write about because otherwise it is a little trickier to do it the other way. So I guess that would be proactive.
I mean, if there's an idea that exists that you're drawing from, I think it's more reactive.
Okay.
Which that's how I am. I'm very reactive. I'll be, and like, for instance, I'll be watching an episode of Suits or whatever. And halfway through, I'll have this like light bulb moment. It has nothing to do with the show. It just has to do with something going on in my own, world. And I'll make a note of it. And like, it spawns this, maybe 500 word thought in my head of, whatever it is. But me sitting there, like I could sit there all day, not watching something and would have 2 out of, 2 of them versus watching a show and I might have 30.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So then I guess I would say I'm probably more reactive. Cause even like the other night I was, do you know the Belonging Church in Nashville? Have you heard of them? It's like, I think it's Carrie Job, and her husband and like Natalie Grant. It's like a couple, like Christian artists who are like the lead worshipers there. So, they sometimes like do like live streams, of their like worship sessions. And I stumbled upon it the other day while I was on YouTube and I was like, oh, I'm going to click on it. And as I was like praising and worshiping, an idea came and it was a melody. And I had to like literally stop my phone, turn on my voice memo and record the melody. Cause it just came to me. So yeah, I feel that actually happens a lot now that I think of it. Happens very, very often. I'll just become very, I don't know if it's like just like the creative juices just kind of start, amplifying in the moment. But yeah, I feel like I become more inspired when I am like watching a show, watching a movie, or, listening to a song that has just like, ignited something in me. So yeah, I would probably say I'm more reactive
Okay.
to things.
When you are working on a song, would you say, and your response is to be reactive, right? So when you're
Mm-hmm.
working on a song or creation, are you, what is the, what is generally speaking, the result you want the experience you want the audience to have? Are you looking to create something that they are maybe having a creative, when I say creative, right, I'm responding creatively to things that when I, in a
Mm-hmm.
different way, obviously, than you're responding creatively to things. So are you looking for them to have a creative response to, to the song or to whatever it is? Or are you looking to communicate a specific message? What,
I would, yeah.
what is your goal for the audience, generally speaking?
Yeah, for me, it's really wanting the message to like relate to whatever it is that they may be going through. Just because for me, like as like the process, the songwriting process, the creating the song process, all of it for me is always like very therapeutic. And so like I'll like while I'm doing like the whole process while I'm writing and stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can relate to this, And so for me, it's more, yeah, just wanting the audience, the listener to have that moment of like, that realization moment of, oh my gosh, I can totally relate to this. Somebody's on my side, like she's gone through it too, or whatever it may be. Yeah, I would say it's more that like wanting the audience to just be able to relate to whatever it is, that maybe I went through. And I think for me, it's always like really cool to see, like people being able to relate, because I'm like, oh my gosh, you relate to me, like not only do they relate to me, but I relate to them too, so it's just like really kind of amazing to like see that all unfold too.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So what sorts of things, speaking of relating to circumstances or encouraging people in the midst of whatever their circumstances are, whatever, what, what are the sorts of things, like where is your head at? A lot of people talk about the pandemic and how like there's a lot of negative components to that. And I know at the beginning you were talking about how you're in a waiting period, and there's been a lot of things making at least life different, if not more difficult, relative to the career
Yeah.
pursuits that you have. And personally, I try and be careful about phrasing the pandemic as like this, the reason that I might, am depressed or like am struggling or something, because I think that there will always be things in life that we can always point to. And it's more about
Of course.
what we're choosing to try and do in the midst of it. Because like, if it wasn't the pandemic, it could have been a car accident. If it wasn't the car accident, it
Yeah.
could have been getting fired from your job anyway. It's just like,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
easy to assume that, or it's easy to point towards a particular thing as if that is the issue that's causing you to be miserable or something along those lines. So I'm curious, where would you say, like, where has your mindset been at over the last, year at this point? And then also next to that, what do you do to, to be, not motivated, but continue to maintain positivity, mental health, and, fitness, health, whatever it is. What is kind of like, where have you been at? And then what is your response, and what is your, like your personal, you know, uh, yeah, your personal response to where you've been at?
Yeah. So when the whole like pandemic and everything, the stay at home order was put up last year, around this time last year, I had already kind of been dealing with a lot of anxiety. And it just, I mean, like once they were like, y'all are staying at home, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go crazy, like literally going to go psycho. So I started to kind of panic, because because it was just like one of those things where I was like, oh no, I'm already dealing with anxiety and now I have to stay at home. Like, and then what am I going to do? And then the worst part about it too was the exact same week that they put the stay at home order here. I think it was like March, like 13, 15, something like that. Yeah. Was around the same time that I was just about to start filming a new show that I had booked called Maverick, and it didn't happen. And I remember just feeling so discouraged. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I think something that I kind of learned just like within the last year was don't bank on anything. Like I was like, I am banking on this show to like give me everything, that I need and blah, blah, blah. Don't bank on anything. Like everything in life is temporary anyways. It's fleeting. When we're putting our hope and our trust and our sense of security and everything like in the things of the world, it's just like, it may satisfy you for a moment, but it's not going to last forever. So for me, I think where I began to find like peace and, just like, okay, acceptance of like, okay, this is happening, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stay like this forever. It's only momentary. I think just like in my relationship with God, I really like started to learn about like myself, about the more important things in life. I began to realize, oh, wow, we actually don't have a lot of control over the majority, like 99.9% of the things in our lives. It really is, God, like he is the one in control. So for me, it was that like, I really began to like lean into my relationship with God. And not that I wasn't already doing it before, but I feel like that really just like heightened it on a whole nother level. And this year in particular, so like every year I feel like, we always have these like resolutions, like I'm going to work out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And actually the other day on Instagram, I posted something, it was just like a picture, like me.
I saw it. It's what spawned this question. And you looked awesome. So
yes,
congrats.
Yes, thank you. No, but it's so much more than just like physical. This year, I told myself at the beginning of the year that I really did want to focus, on my mind, my body, and my soul. Like really give myself time to focus emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically on just me, kind of like step away from all the noise, all the, the people, the things, whatever, the social media, everything. And I think it's like the first time ever in my life that I've actually I've gone through with what I said I was going to do, which makes me so proud of myself. Cause it's like, again, like I know that I'm not doing it on my own. Like it is truly like all been by the grace of God, but it's like, I've never been one to like actually follow through with things that I've said I was going to do. Not like, I'm more so saying like with like resolutions and stuff. So it's been really amazing to like experience, this newfound sense of, I guess, I mean, not control, but control, where I've, or discipline, really. It's really discipline, not control, discipline. Where, like every day, I take intentional time to really just, focus on my mind, like step away from all the noise, put my phone down, and just kind of like reflect, be with the Lord in, a moment of prayer or worship or whatever it may be, focusing on my body, giving myself that like attention, that I wasn't given it before, where I'm like now focusing on what it is that I'm eating, what it is that I'm putting into. So I feel, essentially, I feel like from last year to now, I have seen, an impeccable amount of change in just like every aspect of my life. It's not perfect. It never will be. I wish it was, but it's not. But I've just seen so much growth, and I've seen, just like that discipline, like I've had more discipline over myself just in general. And it's been amazing to see. So we started from the bottom and now we're here.
Further up and further in always.
Praise God.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's really really awesome to hear. And it's, I think that's one of the positive ways that I really hope people can latch on to the difference between like we were talking about Instagram and even being in the creative space and in acting and then things like that. And I don't mean to assume or prescribe too much, right? But I think one of the common topics of our society is like, oh, we have to look a certain way, we have to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between that being your mentality and your mentality being doing what's actually, it's, scientifically, logically, justifiably, good and healthy for your body. Right. And,
Exactly.
Sure, the results might be more positive, right, in terms of what society, appreciates, but that's not really what's important. What's important is, what you were saying and the things you were saying in terms of, actual exercise and eating. Like the thing is the biggest is like what we're eating. Like that's one of the things just in general. I don't understand, why people, choose to consume such horrible stuff. It's like, it's really bad for your body. And it's not so much that you can't you can get away with it now, but when you, not to get too, health focused here, but right. When you understand that like your body completely replaces every cell in your body, I think it's like once a year or something like that, or like you're a completely new person every 6 to 7 years or something, right? Like once you understand that, it's like, those cells are being fed and energized by whatever it is that you're eating now. And so go through, 30 years of revolution. And it's like, of that process. And it's like, it's not going to be good unless you're building a healthy foundation now. And again, going back to what you were talking about, which is like, that doesn't, guarantee anything. Right. Because we're not in control of much of anything. And so, that's still, negative things can still happen, but I love your approach. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I have a couple different types of questions as we get to the end here. So one thing that I wanted to ask was if there was a favorite podcast or a couple different favorite podcasts or interviews with actors or actresses or, artists, creatives, like whatever, that you've really appreciated the most.
So I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really like a podcaster, but when I do listen to them, it's normally like ones, well, I mean, obviously now I'm gonna listen to you, Britton, hello. But yeah, so I just recently did, also like another podcast with two really sweet new friends. They're from Australia and their podcast is called A Love Like This. It's like very like faith-based. They have like lots of like men, women, kind of talking about a lot of different things, like body positivity and, God-given gifts and just like a lot of different stuff. So I feel like for me, if I were to say like, the ones that I am into, it's the ones, kind of like, like yours right now, like where you're just kind of like talking or, about like life or, I don't know, career or faith-based, I don't really know many in particular. I think there was this other one, I can't remember what it was called, but the girl, who like, it's like her podcast, her name is, I think, Mallory Irvin. Can't remember what her podcast is called, but yeah, I listened to a few of hers and it was just like so inspiring. She normally has like girls like come on and it's just very like encouraging. I love like the whole, women empowerment podcasts. Those are always great, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I need to get into the whole podcast scene because
there's a ton of content out there.
Pretty cool. Yeah. There's so many.
Yeah, no, there's a lot out there. And the reason I was asking is because when you were talking about finding motivation or creative energy and things like that, one of the things that you mentioned was listening to artists or actors and actresses do interviews and podcasts. So that's what I was curious if any of those had rarely stood out.
It's normally like YouTube. Like I'll find their interviews.
YouTube counts.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So then, I normally do like YouTube. I'll listen to like, right now I've been listening to a lot of like the Outlander interviews. Just because I'm like, honestly, I'm so, I don't want to use the word obsessed because that's like kind of ridiculous, but
Thank you for
I
having
just like
that
really
as a
love it. I've been
consideration.
super, like motivated and inspired by, their work and even just like who they are as people, like outside of, their job and, their characters, like they're actually like amazing people. So, yeah, so I'll just like go on YouTube. I'll find like, they have a lot of, like there's this one called like the actors table or something like that. Again, I can't quite remember all the names of them, but yeah, they'll have like tons of actors just like come in and, they'll tell their story. It's just very like inspiring, very motivating. So yeah, for me, it's more like YouTube. I'll like look it up on YouTube or, watch the ones that are recommended. But yeah, I need
Okay.
to get on that podcast game though.
Okay. What are there any artist documentaries that you've watched and enjoyed? And like ones that come to mind, like there's, an older Elvis Presley one. There's, I think there's a Johnny Cash one. Taylor Swift's came out, a few years ago, a couple years ago, whatever it was.
Yes.
There are a few like that. Are there any of those that you've watched that you loved?
So I've actually been wanting to watch the Britney Spears one because I've heard that one's like
Okay.
really good and people are like, oh no, I actually like my heart goes out to her type deal. So I've been wanting to watch that one, but I haven't recently. The other day though, I don't know how I stumbled upon in I think it was like a short, or maybe it was just like videos of Elvis. Like now that you mention it, I think I had stumbled upon Priscilla Presley, and then I was like, I want to like watch. So I looked up, I think it was like Elvis's like last show or something like that. I just became so like intrigued to see like how this, where he was like mentally, like where, his state was mentally and just like physically and stuff. And it was actually kind of like upsetting. Like he just looked so ill. And I was like, oh no, like he actually was like, like right before he passed away, not in the best place. And it just, it seemed like the people too around him, they weren't really like doing anything for him. And I don't know, it was just like really sad, like to watch. So I became like weirdly intrigued by that. And I mean, other than that, like recently I haven't really watched too many documentaries. I've been wanting to also kind of like get back on that. But yeah, the Elvis one the other day was kind of, I was like, oh wow, it like really opened my eyes, to like, just kind of like what he was actually dealing with. And unfortunately, the people around him in his corner at the time just weren't really, helping the poor guy. So yeah, I became super intrigued by that the other day, weirdly enough. But
have you seen, speaking of that topic, have you seen the Johnny Cash movie with Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay.
So good.
I love that movie. The ending didn't quite go all the way because like the end of his life, it's both sad because he still continued to struggle, but also super positive in terms of what he chose to do with, with his life and career.
Yeah.
And voice. But the reason I was asking, because I feel like he and his story presents a slightly more, redemptive arc to kind of the same circumstances and situation. So
yeah, I did see that movie. I actually watched that like a good few years ago. So
okay.
I don't remember it fully, but yeah, I do remember it being very, very good.
Okay.
But
okay.
yeah.
All right. So then I think the final question, we'll see.
Okay.
I'm curious, as you're thinking about your future, your career, your artistry, have you thought about anything pertaining to NFTs and cryptocurrency and anything about that? And or have you even heard of it? And
I was just about to say, I have not.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking is like, this is something that I've been watching a lot of YouTube about.
Okay.
And so have you heard of like Bitcoin and Ethereum and like
Yes.
cryptocurrencies? Okay. So basically what, different artists are doing, and not just artists, YouTube content creators, all kinds of people are creating these things called non-fungible tokens, which basically means it's like it's a digital token entity, which can't be altered or hacked or anything. It just exists. And they're assigning essentially value to those tokens. And so like one really famous, there's some controversy around this, but it's the best case in point, the most widely reported, is there's a painter. I think he does like, graphic design, paint, and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, a painter called Beeple, and he just sold like a token for a bunch of different art, and it was like for $69 million. And essentially what artists are trying to do is either there's two ways to treat it. So one is, if you're like a painter, you can create an NFT, and you do it through mining, and there's a whole technical side to it, but you mine the NFT, you create this NFT, and it's directly tied to your art piece. And so whoever owns the art can prove that it's their art and it's the original with like the ownership of this NFT, because you can track the history of ownership on the blockchain, through this
that's awesome.
NFT history, basically. And but one of the things that people are talking about trying to do from an artist perspective is, if, say, you, Nandy, were to create, 20 NFTs, 20 NFT tokens, and you would then sell them you could do it via auction or at a fixed price or whatever, and you could assign specific value to those NFTs. So for instance, if you were like, I don't know, I'm just making this up, but if you were Justin Bieber and you had a Justin Bieber, NFT, then maybe it comes with always have lifetime backstage passes, and you get 0.001% of his earnings or whatever. Obviously Justin Bieber wouldn't need to do that. But like, if you as a starting artist were like, hey, I'm trying to get started, instead of signing to a label or something, I create X amount of NFTs, so-and-so, as many people can buy them. And then those people can either resell them, and you always get 10% of the resale value, and, or, they can get like 0.05% of your earnings over the next 10 years or over lifetime. So it's a way in theory, it would be a way for, patrons to essentially directly support their favorite artist, without that artist having to go through like traditional means of, promulgating and selling and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's why it's completely different, it's still like very, very new. And people are still figuring it out, but
neat.
That's why I was curious.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think that's super cool. I'd love to like learn more about that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's super interesting and crazy. And if you ever want to learn more, I can always send you some stuff that I've been watching, but it's definitely new. So, okay. Well, I think we should wrap this one up. Where can or where should people find you?
So I'm mostly on Instagram at Nandy Martin. And then, well, I don't post too much on YouTube anymore, but if you wanted to go watch any YouTube videos, that's also Nandy Martin.
Okay. Awesome. And they can find they can find your music on Spotify, yes?
Yes, Spotify, Apple Music, new single being released very, very soon, hopefully in April. So hopefully this coming month. So stay tuned.
That's very exciting.
Yes, I'm very excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nandy, for coming on. I loved this episode. I think this is my longest episode to date, which
really
exciting. Yes, because I've been trying to keep them shorter, but then I always talking to interesting people. I always have so many questions. So
yeah. No, this was awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We will see you next time.